The president is set to make a major address to the nation tomorrow night. More violence threatened against Supreme Court justices. And could the SAVE Act actually get through Congress this time? House Republicans taking another swing at it. It's Wednesday, July 15th, and this is news and commentary from America's Heartland. Welcome in to Heartlander News. Hey, glad to be with you today on Heartlander News. Be sure to bookmark and regularly check in for the very latest news headlines written by journalists you can actually trust. It's good work and good journalism, and you can find it every day at heartlandernews.com. My name's Chris Stigall. Tomorrow evening, the president is expected to make a major address to the nation in prime time. He talked a little about this yesterday. Take a listen.
Machines and integrity. Can you give us sort of a sneak peek about what to expect and tell
Well,
the
I'd
audience
rather
in
save
America?
it. It will concern that subject, and we'll have a couple of other things to
Why
say
should people
also.
watch though?
But I'd rather save it, but it's really big news. It's really, really big news. And our country has to shape up. But that's what we're going to be talking about Thursday is it doesn't get bigger, because without free and fair elections, you don't have a country. We'll be discussing other things too, but it's going to be a very big announcement. Yeah.
So reports seem to suggest that this will be information surrounding Georgia's 2020 Senate elections. If true, it's a big deal because presidents don't interrupt primetime television to revisit history. They do it generally because they believe this is an issue of vital importance. Of course, election fraud is a national security issue. Fraud is becoming one of the defining issues of President Trump's second term. It's everywhere, sadly. Medicare fraud, Medicaid fraud, COVID relief fraud, identity theft, government waste, billions in improper payments. And if Americans lose confidence that our elections are secure on top of all of that, well, the damage goes far beyond dollars. Public trust, the foundation of self-government, begins to erode entirely. Of course, the Democrat Party is robbing Americans of their money and their elections, and if new evidence is presented tomorrow night, it's going to bring a focus to how the Democrats operate. They have embraced full-blown fraud and communism. This is an issue of accountability, ultimately. Americans need to clearly understand who Democrats are and what they stand for. J.D. Vance, our vice president, has made combating fraud across the federal government a major priority. His task force, along with investigators like Nick Shirley, they continue to uncover waste, abuse, and criminal schemes that have siphoned hundreds of billions from taxpayers. The Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, has identified improper payments on a staggering scale, and they're just scratching the surface. This pattern is pretty difficult to ignore. Wherever oversight is weak, fraud flourishes. And Democrats, they've enabled that fraud. The solution requires real structural change, of course. Measures like the Save America Act, for instance, would establish basic safeguards: voter ID, proof of citizenship, secure chains of custody, and meaningful audits. Our elections must be remade to the standards that honest self-government demands. Half measures and deflection, that'll destroy our country. Look, I believe the defining question of the 2026 midterms won't simply be taxes or spending or even immigration. It's going to be about accountability. Can Americans trust their government to communists? And it's not a hyperbolic question anymore. If the president's address tomorrow night marks the beginning of a push to root out election fraud, it could become one of the most consequential speeches of President Trump's second term. Because government cannot work unless the people believe the rules are enforced fairly. And that's what this fight is about, ultimately. I believe this will be the focus of the Republican message going into November. I'm fully committed to join in that fight personally to restore accountability in every phase of government. And I would bet that most of you who watch this feel the exact same way. I know Speaker Mike Johnson does. In fact, he talked about what we're up against just yesterday at a press conference, and he laid it out. He was on fire. This was just him riffing off the top of his head. Listen to him fire away at where things stand and what he believes we're staring down the barrel of as we head into the fall.
Okay? And that's why we're speaking in such stark terms, because we need America to wake up. We're not even, look, 35 years ago, Republicans and Democrats in Congress, when I was coming up in, the Reagan years, they were fighting communism on a distant shore. Now it's here. But in Congress, they all agreed on that. They obviously knew that we had to fight communism. And so what they were doing here for domestic policy, that was foreign policy. Domestic policy, they were arguing over, marginal tax rates and the shades of regulation and how large the government should be. There wasn't a huge difference, a chasm between the two parties. Those days are gone. Right now, domestically, we are arguing, we are debating, we are fighting. The election will be over whether we're going to maintain our freedom in a constitutional republic, the greatest experiment in self-governance in the history of the world, the longest surviving constitution on the planet, the nation that everybody wants to emulate and everybody wants to come here. We have to seal our borders so they won't flood over them. We're the only nation in the world that has that distinction. We're the last great superpower. We are the greatest nation in the history of the world. We are fighting right now in Congress over whether we're going to maintain our status as a constitutional republic or we're going to trade that in, dismantle the foundations, and go down this dark road of death to communism. That is the question on the ballot this fall. Now, DSA published their platform. I hope you're all covering. I hope you're writing in depth about their platform. I read it out at an event a few weeks ago, and they've made an ad mocking me reading their platform. Now, they didn't put the clips with the worst parts of it. Representative Jimenez just told you, Carlos told you that, well, of course they want to pack the Supreme Court, and they want a unicameral legislature. They want the House to run everything, abolish the Senate, because they believe the House would be run by Marxist communists. They'll be able to run the table on everything. They want to remove the president. What they also want to do is abolish all borders. They don't want any borders. They want mass amnesty granted to anyone who can come onto our shores without exception, even for terrorists and hardened dangerous criminals. Okay? They don't want prisons. It's in their platform. They want to remove the carceral state, they said. No prisons. They don't want to fund the police. This is not a game. Everybody needs to understand these crazy little mini Mamdanis who are popping up all around the country, they are a danger to you and your family. This is not a game. If they promise you free stuff, there is far more beneath those promises that even some of these people do not understand themselves.
Got it.
And
that's the state of things. You can tell Mike Johnson is fired up. That's just from the heart off the top of his head yesterday. Talking about Mamdani, New York City. It's in a death spiral under that guy, a communist monster. He's turning the greatest city in the world into a cautionary tale of radical failure. That's what Johnson's warning for all of us coming into the fall. Look at the results. New York now has the highest rents in America. Record highs, crushing working families while successful people and businesses are tucking tail and running. Talent is leaving fast. Tax revenue is collapsing. And instead of reversing course, what does Mamdani do? He doubles down on these socialist policies, this failure, driving the exodus. And even worse, when things like rapes are reported as having spiked, what does this radical do? He doesn't rush to protect women. He actually made excuses. Do you know that this guy claimed the numbers are up only because of an expanded definition of rape? Whoa. Direct quote. We have expanded the definition of rape, complained the mayor. Think about that. While predators roam free and victims suffer, the mayor of New York is redefining reality to cover up the failure of his soft on crime ideology. And folks, that's not compassion. It's contempt for the safety of New Yorkers, especially its women. This is the left's pattern. Minimize real violence, redefine statistics, pretend the problem doesn't exist. Meanwhile, Mamdani demands more money for his own staff and political allies as the streets deteriorate and services collapse and the city hemorrhages residents. It's classic big government leftist moves. Enrich your inner circle, ignore everyday citizens, and gaslight the public when the predictable disaster hits. The highest rents New York has ever seen. Record business flight. Soaring crime, excused and downplayed. This is what happens when you let radicals who despise American success run the show. You know, Kayleigh McEnany, she was over there on Fox and having a real fight with Jessica Tarlov on this very point. Give me number 407. Aaron, this is Kayleigh McEnany telling Jessica Tarlov, the token Democrat on Fox, what she'd better be aware of in her party if they're not quick to purge it. Just what we're talking about in number 407. Take a listen to this.
That you have to deal with. They were not radical enough, so they put out a proposal this week. Fox has the document. They want to eliminate the Senate, literally eliminate Article 1, goodbye, see you later. Eliminate the Supreme Court, Article 3, goodbye, see you later. They want to defund the Department of War, and immigrants, all of them have amnesty. Like, you guys are dealing with absolute radical, crazy maniacs.
Yes.
And your party needs to call it out, because it's just John Fetterman and 13 House Democrats. That's it.
Well, that's what I was going to
that you have to deal with.
She ain't wrong. Mayor Mamdani is not an anomaly. It's why people like Mike Johnson's heads are rightly on fire. Yours should be too. Mine certainly is. Guys like Mamdani are the logical endpoint of modern leftism. The same blueprint that ruined San Francisco and Chicago. They don't solve problems. They tax them. They regulate them. They redefine them and make them worse while they lecture everyone else as if we're to blame. New Yorkers and Americans nationwide see exactly what's happening. Cities don't belong to socialist experiments. Islamists or communist sympathizers don't belong there either. Cities belong, our American way belongs to the people who built these cities through hard work and enterprise and the rule of law. The only solution is total rejection. Throw these radicals out of office and restore accountability and safety and sanity. Let's reject excuses. Let's protect women, by the way. Let's stop punishing people's success. Let's end the taxpayer-funded grift. It's either that or you lose not just New York, you lose the country, as Mike Johnson warned. The good news is, on the House side, as he said, we're getting very, very close, perhaps, to another SAVE Act swing. We could actually see this happen again. It's already passed the House 3 times. I think they have or are about to do it a 4th time. In fact, Steve Scalise, give me number 403 here, Aaron. Here's Leader Scalise announcing, I guess this would be the 3rd reconciliation bill, which needs just 50 votes. Again, this is a reconciliation. So it's a little different strategically, leaving the House, going to the Senate. It just needs a simple majority vote. Scalise talking about the details. This could be meaningful in terms of, again, restoring the system, making people trust our elections again. Could the Save America Act pass this way? Maybe. Here's Scalise.
In our work, we have a lot of work still to do. You're going to see this week the Budget Committee move the beginnings of Reconciliation 3.0 out of committee. And we're moving more bills through the floor this week, another appropriations bill. But at the same time, we are also continuing to raise the alarm that on the other side of this strong House majority, House Republican majority fighting for freedom, are now communists who want to change everything and take away those freedoms. When our work.
That's right. So we will watch that closely, and we're hopeful. I think there's a lot of hope, actually, that the Senate might accomplish something this time, maybe. Speaking of the Senate, Justice Elena Kagan and Amy Coney Barrett testified in the Senate chambers this week. And Amy Coney Barrett specifically talked about the violence that has been directed at her since she became a Supreme Court justice. Give me number 400 here as she discusses. And by the way, Susan Collins of Maine, in just a moment, I'll let you hear this too. She reminds us how we came to this point. Who's threatening violence? Who's calling for ginned up agitators directed at Supreme Court justices? We know where it comes from. And it's not the American right. It's not anybody who calls themselves conservative. At least nobody that conservatives affiliate with or organize with anyway. Anyway, here's number 400. Here's Justice Amy Coney Barrett talking about the violence that she has encountered in just the brief time that she's been sitting on the Supreme Court.
And those statistics sound abstract, but being on the receiving end of them is not. So I thought I would just share a little bit about how the threats have affected me and my family personally. They have required me to, my children, to think about and see things that children should not have to see or think about. One example is when threats to my life were particularly intense a few years ago around the time of the Dobbs leak. My security detail sent me home with a bulletproof vest, and I carried it into my house, put it into my bedroom, dropped it down on a table, turned around, and my 12-year-old son was standing in the doorway of my bedroom, and he wanted to know what it was and why I had it. And I didn't know how to respond because maybe I lack imagination, but I didn't expect that performing this service was going to put me in the position of explaining to my children what a bulletproof vest was and why I had to wear one. It's also been reported in the news that roughly 6 weeks ago, I was the victim of a swatting incident. At that point, my teenage son, one of my teenage sons, opened the door to go out with friends and saw in our street, it was full of police cars who had responded to a false report of gunshots and raised voices in my home. I was very, very grateful that I had Supreme Court police outside my home because they were able to stop and meet with and explain to the county police that it had been a false alarm. And so the police did not actually attempt to enter our home. Many of us, me included, have received threatening anonymous deliveries designed to intimidate and harass us. They are often sent in the name of Judge Salas's son, who I think, as you mentioned in the beginning, Mr. Chairman, is deceased because he was killed by a disgruntled lawyer who showed up at Judge Salas's home intending to kill her, but her son, 20 years old at the time, opened the door and took the bullet instead. Her husband, standing behind, was seriously injured. So I think the message on these deliveries being sent in his name is clear. As Justice Kagan said, federal judges across the country, throughout the judiciary, including the Supreme Court, continue to do their jobs without fear or favor, but the threat level is really high.
And why are we here? Clip 401, Senator Susan Collins of Maine. By the way, things are looking better for her since the Nazi that the American left tried to pick as her opponent in Maine, Graham Plattner, has dropped out. Things are looking increasingly better for her. But Susan Collins reminds us in this clip how we got here, why people like Amy Coney Barrett have to wear bulletproof vests when ruling on certain constitutional or non-constitutional issues from the bench. Take a listen.
The court specifically. For example, a senator stood in front of the Supreme Court building and called out 2 members by name, saying that they had released the whirlwind and that they will pay the price. Other public officials have called the court corrupt, out of control, and serving an extremist agenda. The court.
She's correct in reminding us exactly who's been driving this. Susan Collins reminding us that these are the words of Senator Chuck Schumer. You'll reap the whirlwind and you'll pay the price. He's the guy that stood in front of the Supreme Court and said that. Democrats are the one that described them as corrupt and out of control. They drive these people to become literal assassins. We've seen it to Leader Scalise on a baseball field. We've seen this behavior before in front of Supreme Court justices. Guy was arrested for trying to kill Justice Kavanaugh in his lawn a few years ago. These people are driven to lunatic rage by Democrats. And their conclusion, ultimately, the only thing to do is to kill or be killed. Quite literally. We see it with ICE. I'm so disappointed, frankly, to read the news. This from Just the News. The stops have played a major role in the agency operations until a new policy, which goes into effect immediately. What's the policy? ICE yesterday curtailed agents stopping vehicles as part of the federal agency's nationwide deportation operation. The change in policy is being reported by several news outlets. Under the new policy, ICE will conduct vehicle stops only for those considered to be key targets, such as those with violent criminal histories. And this is all because of An ICE agent in Maine fatally shot a motorist. The victim is a 26-year-old Colombian nationalist, but as of Tuesday, whether he was the intended target of the arrest warrant remains unclear. He was shot during a traffic stop. In both instances, federal officials allege the victim used the vehicle as a way to put agents in danger. Of course they did. They're kamikaze leftists. They know, look, protesters, same deal. They're using their vehicles as weapons. And then ICE agents open fire, somebody gets killed, and we blame the ICE agent. That's the new game that we play. They are so committed, the American left is. They will kill themselves, get themselves killed, or murder others. And they are driven by the political office holders who tell them to do it. And again, it doesn't make anybody's lives better. They improve not a bit of anyone's lives. They sow chaos. They sow corruption. They sow death, destruction, despair, murder. They're not fixing anybody's problems. That's the American left today. And it's worth remembering. And it is deadly serious. And it's why Mike Johnson is so passionate about what he's saying. And I am grateful, frankly, that the Speaker of the House is on fire about this. We haven't had a Speaker of the House on fire about this takeover, frankly. That's what it is. It's a communist takeover of the country. I don't remember the last time I've seen a Republican in Congress, in leadership, speak as articulately, passionately, off the top of their head, off the cuff about this, as I saw in Mike Johnson this week. It's good to know that the Republicans are locked in on this, because it's ball game. If these lunatics get control again, it's ball game. Capitol Hill saw an unusual moment yesterday as Supreme Court Justices Amy Coney Barrett and Elena Kagan testified before lawmakers. This from the Hill, played one of those clips. The main reason for their appearance was to make the case for the court's budget request for the coming year, which includes an increase in security. The hearings also encompassed other issues, including pressure from lawmakers to create a way to enforce an ethics code for justices. Kagan, the liberal nominated by Obama, as well as Justice Barrett, they might be seen as an odd pairing, but their personal chemistry was notably warm. They often deferred to each other and agreed with one another's points. The Hill's biggest takeaways on this one, by the way, that Barrett provided evidence of the threat she faced, as we played for you. Elena Kagan takes implicit aim at President Trump. Justices otherwise avoid rising to political bait, says the Hill. Lawmakers press on ethics and shadow docket with little success. Elena Kagan did pay tribute to Lindsey Graham. I just thought that notable. A lot of tributes coming into Lindsey Graham this week. Let's play that. Justice Elena Kagan. Give me number 402 here, Aaron. Talking about her 2010 confirmation hearing and Senator Lindsey Graham's role therein. Take a listen.
But if you don't mind, Chairman Joyce, before I do that, I would like to say a few words about Senator Graham's untimely passing. Senator Graham, of course, was a member of this House before he became a senator. And in part, I wish to express the entire court's condolences to his sister, the rest of his family, his many friends and colleagues in the House, in the Senate, and elsewhere. On behalf of the entire court. But I'd also like to make a few personal comments. It's not very often, well, I'll just say that I didn't get many Republican votes when I was confirmed to the Supreme Court. And that's the usual state of things today. Not many Republicans vote for the nominees of somebody selected by a Democratic president, and not many Democrats do the same for someone selected by a Republican president. And one would not expect such a cross-party, if you will, vote, certainly from somebody from a deep red or deep blue state. And yet Senator Graham voted for me. And I vividly remember, because he was a vivid person, the conversation that we had in his office prior to my hearing, where he got to know me. It was a long conversation. He took the opportunity to get to know me. He questioned me with great seriousness and great knowledge about my record as Solicitor General, including particularly the various terrorism issues that office had dealt with over the time I was Solicitor General. And I still more vividly remember the conversations that we had at my hearing itself. In the last day or so, many people have talked about how funny Senator Graham was. I think Al Franken said he was the funniest man in the Senate. But what I remember about that hearing was that somehow Senator Graham made me look funny, which is a harder thing entirely, by asking me what I had done on Christmas the following year. And I'll skip the back and forth, but many people said to me afterwards, that exchange with Senator Graham was the moment my confirmation was sealed. So I want to express my gratitude towards him, not only for his support, but for approaching the confirmation process with the kind of seriousness that he did and the kind of respect he did. And I never got to know Senator Graham very well, but I can see why so many people will deeply miss him. And I just wanted to convey that on behalf of me, and again, express the condolences of the entire court to his family and friends.
So a nice moment. We don't get a lot of those. Just thought you would be interested in hearing it. Look, Justice Elena Kagan is not one that I share much, if anything, with her. Maybe a ruling or two here and there. And I think that Lindsey Graham was often, we played for you earlier in the week, his firebrand anger at the way Democrats were treating Justice Kavanaugh. Of course, Democrats never respond in kind. I think that's, where we are today. It would have been maybe an entirely different situation if we didn't feel that Democrats are so damn dishonest and destructive. It's difficult now to, commemorate or fondly remember when Republicans were helpful in advancing Democrats. I suspect there are a number of you today, given what we've just laid out and talked about, that Elena Kagan being confirmed and having the help of a Republican like Lindsey Graham doesn't make you feel great. I understand that. I don't think Elena Kagan is quite as wacko as maybe the other two women she serves alongside, one of whom can't even really define what a woman is. But we're just in a different time, and I know people clamor for a day and wish or imagine a day where Democrats and Republicans really, at the end of the day, they're not at odds, and they come together and they set their petty differences aside, and they come together for a common good or what have you. I don't think that exists anymore. Take a look at it. Ayanna Pressley, give me this number 396 here, Aaron. This is, by definition, this is what I'm talking about. Ayanna Pressley, huge left-wing Massachusetts leftist, and Brandon Gill, a rising star amongst House Republicans from Texas. Just take a listen to this exchange. It's quite brilliant and telling, and tells you where we are today, Republicans versus Democrats. It's all you need to know, really.
And that is why I've introduced legislation to add the Equal Rights Amendment as the 28th Amendment, enshrining it as the law of this land.
I'd be happy to look at your Equal Rights Amendment and read through it. I guess my biggest question was, does it define what a woman is?
I look forward to your signing on.
We'll take a look at it. I just was hoping for some analytical clarity, but thank you. We'll take a look at it.
And that
I mean, think of it. He's right to point it out. Speaking of Supreme Court justices, Justice, what is a woman? Ketanji Jackson, Brown Jackson, whatever the hell her name is. She wouldn't define what a woman was in her Supreme Court confirmation hearings, for the love of all that's good and holy. A Supreme Court justice not willing to define what a woman even is. So you talk about the Equal Rights Amendment to the Constitution, Congresswoman Presley? Brandon Gill is right. Do you define what a woman is in the thing before we take a look at it? I'd like to know. Some analytical digging. Good on him. Byron Donalds. DEI, this subject is still very real. UCLA and UCSF medical schools, the Free Beacon reports, have abandoned required DEI courses following Free Beacon investigations. This is good news. Leaders of the medical schools at the University of California, LA, and the University of California, San Fran, told Congress this week that they had discontinued mandatory social justice courses that claimed weight loss is a hopeless endeavor and endorsed unlawful takeovers of public infrastructure, telling the House Committee on Education and Workforce that the classes had not met the school standards. Part of this, scrutinized by Byron Donalds and members of the House. Give me 397 here, talking about DEI, just taking on another name. This is very much part of the left-wing agenda as well. President Trump trying to root this out. Any tax dollars that are going into universities or schools that are funding this kind of garbage, got to quit. So Donalds is reminding us sometimes it's just DEI by another name. So while some of these schools are publicly abandoning it, they say they may just reconstitute it under some other new name. Listen.
What is community belonging?
It's what they call DEI offices now. It takes the inclusion part of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it talks about how you empower and enable students in these protected classes to be on campus and to be engaged. But it's really the same operation that was there before about dividing the campus.
Why don't we just empower them to be in class and actually learn? Wouldn't that be empowering a student?
I believe it would be, yes.
Let me answer this question, because I've never heard of this classification. Say that community
belonging.
Community belonging. Okay, I've never heard this term before, but that's okay. That's why we're having this hearing. If this is what colleges and institutions are moving towards to shield or to rebrand DEI, what are some metrics or some planks that policymakers need to be looking out for, so that while we continue to move towards a true colorblind society based upon merit, that we are examining what's happening at institutions of higher learning who still want to hold on to DEI programs by this name of community belonging? What should we be looking for?
Much we should be doing is enforcing existing law. I mean, current laws against discrimination prevent universities from treating students differently. And yet on many campuses, we now have separate graduations. Imagine if we'd had a graduation for white students only, for example, what the uproar would be. And yet on many campuses, we have ethnically based graduations. And so we want to look at enforcing current discrimination law. I think the civil rights focus for so long has been on opening the door to opportunity, and we've allowed this engine to build over it of overt discrimination through DEI.
Right. This hearing, it's always important, these hearings, because you get to learn, you get a peek under the hood of what motivates and the kind of thinking that still emanates from universities, like this lunatic Dr. Sam Hawgood, the chancellor of the University of California, San Francisco, just talking about how they've said they're going to abandon their DEI practices. Well, this is the chancellor of the university, keep in mind. So even though the news seems good, the Free Beacon investigates, give me 398 here. The news seems good, they're going to abandon it. Here's their chancellor still discussing with a Congresswoman, Mary Miller, in this exchange, whether women can get pregnant, non-biological women can get pregnant or not.
Dr. Haygood, UCSF's classroom guide titled Framework for Gender and Sex Concepts in Teaching advises against using the term pregnant women. Instead, it says to use pregnant people. Who are pregnant people compared to pregnant women? Just curious.
So that is a part of a curriculum to help our students who are facing a wide diversity of patients. Of course, the vast majority of pregnancies are in women, and I have absolutely no problem with using the word pregnant women. I use it myself.
Has a non-biological woman ever had a baby?
A transgender person can.
That's not a biological woman. Has a non-biological woman ever had a baby?
I would
No,
reiterate,
it's ridiculous.
We take care of transgender
Okay,
patients.
Dr.
And so you see, there really can't be negotiation with this. Again, back to Mike Johnson's point, you defeat this or you don't. But there's no, you see, when you get romantic about, gosh, I wish there was a time we could get back to a time when Republicans and Democrats would just get together. When I hear people say that, and it drives me bananas. I can't stand when people say, oh, I just wish we could come back to a place where Democrats and Republicans could work together. And I say, I beg your pardon. But if you believe that men can get pregnant, where is the negotiation ground there? Because I don't. And I'm right. And God is on my side on this one because it's in the Bible. It's the Word of God. It's basic biology to boot, if you don't like the faith-based argument. Where's the negotiation process start with that kind of thinking? You'll have to help me. I don't think it exists. So you either defeat this, obliterate it, mock it into what we hope is total annihilation, or you tolerate it and let it incrementally work its way back into the lexicon of our students and eventually society, and God help us what we have after that. There is no negotiating with these people. Here's a Michigan Democrat Senate candidate. Haley Stevens is the name. Perhaps one of the most cringe-worthy campaign pitches that you've ever seen. This is how Democrats are pitching themselves this fall to voters in Michigan.
I am going to be working on our behalf. I am going to be telling the stories on our behalf. And you better believe I'm going to be doing it with a little bit of joy, a little bit of enthusiasm, a little bit of energy, and a little bit of stick it to them. Because that's the Michigan way. I am going to.
Oof. Okay. Well, we wish him well. Over on let's go over to another channel where a billionaire investor was giving an interview about President Trump. He realized that everything that he had been told, this is number 408, Aaron, he has realized that everything he was ever once told about President Trump, having been from a foreign country, much like we discussed earlier in the week about soccer fans from around the world have come and they don't hate the country as much as they expected they were going to, given all the propaganda they've been fed. Listen to this billionaire investor named Chamath. That's his first name. His last name I can't quite pronounce, so I'm not going to butcher it and try. But the left perpetually makes Donald Trump out to be this great Satan, this awful guy, this monster. And here's yet another guy who has to say, actually, that's not true at all.
The reality is that most of us were lied to by the media about President Trump. And if you just go back to the source material, you should take away two things. One, he didn't say half the things he said. And two, why did these other people just fabricate what they wanted to say so that they could essentially assassinate his character? I think that that second thing is completely unacceptable in America. And there's still been no repercussions, really. I took the time to learn about it. I admitted where, the way that I met him was I admitted on the pod, which, has millions of viewers. And I said, I got it totally wrong. Because I went and I watched Charlottesville. And the first person to call me?
Who was it?
President Trump. And I got to know him, and I put the phone down. I called my wife and I said, we got it totally, totally wrong. We were lied to. And then I got to know him, and he is fantastic. The reality is that most of us were lied.
And that's the point. That's what I'm getting at. People were lied to. People have been lied to. The American left has mischaracterized and whipped people up and lied to people about President Trump and Republicans' agenda generally, driven them to quite literal murder. They send out goofballs like Graham Plattner or that chick in Michigan to try to combat it. But meanwhile, it's either that or it's people driven to murderous rage, killing people like Charlie Kirk and others, trying to kill people like Steve Scalise. Why? Over lies like Charlottesville. That guy just said it. I went back, I watched the clip. Trump didn't say anything about very fine people. We got it totally wrong, and nobody has paid any consequence. Back to what I was just saying off the top of the show, accountability. There's been none. So the only way you hold this kind of thing accountable is to defeat it. That's what this election this fall is about. You've got to defeat it. There is no playing nice with it. It must be defeated. And speaking of defeated, President Trump also believes it seems now that Iran is going to need to be defeated if they don't step up and play ball in these negotiations. So far, they have shown that they're not willing to. Give me number 411 here. As President Trump says, it's coming. He's already been bombing the hell out of them again. And he says if it doesn't get better, if Iran doesn't come to the table here shortly, the worst is yet to come for Iran. He shared this yesterday. Take a listen.
Anticipate that the strikes we're seeing this week against Iran will expand? Are you considering hitting energy targets or other locations inside of Iran?
I'll save the energy targets for last, but ultimately we'll hit energy targets, yeah. But we're going to hit them very hard tonight. We're going to hit them very hard tomorrow night. We're going to hit them very hard the night after. And then next week it gets really bad for them because next week comes the power plants. Next week comes the bridges. We're going to knock out all their power plants. We're going to knock out all their bridges unless they get to the table and negotiate.
Do you believe the Iranians are serious about making a deal?
I think they have no choice.
Why haven't they yet?
I think if I didn't do the way I'm doing, they would never make a deal. They would have never made a deal with Obama. That deal was the worst deal. What they did sign was a worthless piece of paper. What they signed with Obama was a worthless piece of paper that was a road to a nuclear weapon. And what I have is a wall. There will be no nuclear weapon. I'll never sign. And when you listed the three things, by far the most important is they will not have a nuclear weapon.
So he seems to mean business. We will continue to watch that. Heartlandernews.com for all the latest news on this and many other stories every single day. Heartlandernews.com. Another piece of news that I will be paying close attention to when you talk about accountability, you need a top cop on the beat, and that's at the Attorney General level. Todd Blanche, right now, President Trump's pick for Attorney General. This from heartlandernews.com today. Todd Blanche is going to face a high-stakes confirmation hearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee beginning today and tomorrow. Blanche, who currently serves as acting Attorney General after Pam Bondi was ousted in April, may face an uphill battle even as one Republican defector could deadlock the committee and stall his nomination. Republicans hold just an 11-10 edge on the committee following the sudden death of Lindsey Graham, although his sister has been obviously confirmed now to take his place. I don't think we necessarily reported on that here, but I know we've reported at it at heartlandernews.com. So the governor there, Henry McMaster of South Carolina, has chosen Lindsey Graham's sister to take his place, and she's been sworn in. And so effectively now, I assume she's going to be on the Senate Judiciary Committee, and so maybe this won't be at issue. But Tom Tillis and John Cornyn, two sore losers on their way out the door in the Senate. They've publicly expressed concerns about Blanche and have not committed to supporting his nomination. So Todd Blanche is a star. I believe he's very, very effective at his job. I think he's deadly serious about getting to the bottom of a lot of the accountability issues we were just talking about. There are some rhino Republican types that may give him trouble. We'll see, but that's going to be a biggie to watch today and tomorrow. Public documents from the Federalist, now released by Chuck Grassley and Ron Johnson, show that Jack Smith, you remember him, that loathsome little guy that led the lawfare against President Trump until President Trump won the election, and then suddenly, poof, he dropped all charges and slunk away, went back down the drain he was dragged out of. Anyway, Jack Smith spied on Congress as special counsel, then lied to them about it. It's the latest in a congressional investigation, Grassley says, has already uncovered criminal abuse of power by Democrats, far worse than Watergate. Grassley and Johnson are among the lawmakers whose private communications were unconstitutionally obtained. These are the latest revelations from the lawmakers' Arctic Frost investigation, which was the code name for Smith's operation, Arctic Frost. I think this is yet another one of those amazing abuses from Democrats. Joe Biden's DOJ, the idea that Jack Smith was pressuring cell phone companies not to alert, and by law they must, and cell phone companies were pressured not to alert senators, sitting United States senators, that they were being spied on by Jack Smith, their communications being intercepted, and they were not allowed to tell their customers, the senators, that that was happening. That's illegal. That's an amazing abuse of power. Guys like Jack Smith should be brought up on charges for this kind of thing, and the confirmation of Todd Blanche goes a long way to get that started. So Jack Smith is one of those guys that most of us who are fair-minded? No. Jack Smith's one of those guys that needs to be brought up on charges. Accountability must happen for him. He weaponized the system, raided a former president's home. This country doesn't come back from things like that if there's not accountability. Now, yes, there was an election, and yes, Donald Trump won, and I've heard the argument that elections fix a lot of this. That's the ultimate in accountability, perhaps. But we have to set a standard that, raiding political opponents' homes is not something we do in the United States. Spying on sitting members of Congress whenever whoever's in charge of the keys at the executive office gets to spy on the opposing party's communications. You don't come back from that as a country, ladies and gentlemen. Again, this is non-negotiable. You either hold this stuff to account and punish it, or you lose the country. It's very important. Less important, but interesting. The House has passed a bill to make daylight savings time permanent. Now, it depends on who you ask about this. Aaron, do you care about daylight savings time? Are you bothered that you got to set the clocks back and forth twice a year? Does that upset you? Do you care?
I would kind of like this to pass and not to worry about it and stuff, honestly.
Set the clock, never touch it again.
Yeah, I think it's silly how some states do, some states don't. Some of the world does, some of the world doesn't. It feels like an outdated thing. I don't know.
All right. Well, the lower chamber, the House, voted 308 to 111 for the Sunshine Protection Act, which would make daylight savings time the permanent standard time. 22 Republicans, 95 Democrats voted against the measure. The legislation now heads to the Senate. Trump has backed the legislation, arguing on his Truth Social post that this bill is so important in that hundreds of millions of dollars are spent every year by people, cities, and states being forced to change their clock. I'm going to work very hard to see the Sunshine Protection Act signed into law. Let us know your comments on that if you have any. Experts advise young workers to just say no to remote work. This also from heartlandernews.com. I thought this interesting. To the 2 million recent college graduates looking to enter the workforce, one expert has some surprising advice. Just say no to remote work. Michael Strain is an economic policy studies director at the American Enterprise Institute and writes that young people should go to work physically, literally. Be at your desk 5 or 6 days per week, he said in a recent article. And if your job is fully remote, start looking for a new one. He cited new research linking higher unemployment rates to younger workers to the rise in remote work. The unemployment rate for college graduates younger than 29 rose 1.3 percentage points from 2019. The study's authors found remote work was responsible for most of that, and that results hold up even when they control for each occupation's exposure to automation. Younger workers banking on their knowledge of technology to give them an edge, the study found that the arrival and increased use of AI has had no effect on the decline in the demand for junior talent. Employers, he says, are increasingly turning away from inexperienced workers for remote roles because such arrangements require relatively more supervision and greater effort to build new knowledge and skills. So, in-person work can help graduates develop emotional intelligence by reading body language and changes in facial expressions and vocal tone, which can't be fully conveyed through video calls. The author of the study also notes remote work has helped several populations, particularly people with disabilities, but for younger workers, he says being physically present is still the thing. Work hard, knock on doors, get to the office before your supervisor arrives. Don't leave work before he or she does. First impressions matter. And like the background on a Zoom call, they can be blurred and distorted unless you are standing face to face. I got to tell you, I know it may sound old-timey and young people don't like hearing it. And frankly, a lot of people that I know who are friends of mine don't like hearing it, but it's just true. I don't think you can replace being in person. I think being in person, and by the way, for everybody that's so concerned about their job being replaced by technology, one of the easiest ways to make the case that your job should be replaced is if you're not physically present, and you don't need to be, and nobody misses you, it seems to me. One man's opinion, though, you didn't ask. Did you see Young Washington by chance? I did. It is outstanding. The Angel Studios film, Young Washington, is, I think it's still out in theaters now. I actually saw it over the 4th of July weekend. Tremendous. Highly recommend it. Kelsey Grammer is in it briefly. He has sort of a smaller role in it, but it tells the story of young George Washington as a kid and how he kind of came up through non-traditional means, no formal education, worked physically, and it was actually, I mean, it was a story of work ethic and drive and desire to get into military leadership, but not go the traditional gentlemanly way of higher education and reform school training and all of that stuff. And just through sheer grit and determination, he worked his way up into sort of a pseudo recognition by the British to give him sort of a pseudo leadership role in the British military, somewhat non-traditional, but still they recognized him just through his hard work. But ultimately, as we all understand, he came to conclude that fighting for the British was not where it was at, not in the best interests of his country. He started to realize that these officers that he was serving alongside actually had the interests of Great Britain and not here at home in Virginia that he loved. And so ultimately, as we all know, that led to the revolution. But it's a great, great film, and I recommend it. And Angel Studios has far exceeded their expectations on this film. Industry tracking projected a domestic opening at approximately 15 million. Box office data now puts it at 20.8 million, averaging about $7,700 per location. That's a figure that matches what Angel Studios and Christian Post separately reported. Some other industry tracking placed the weekend closer to 19.4 million, whatever. But anyway, nevertheless, it did very, very well. And as such, on July 4th, Young Washington earned 7.6 million. Toy Story, it bested Toy Story while finishing behind Minions and Monsters for the day. Over the 3-day weekend, it did very, very well. The film performed disproportionately well outside major coastal markets, Mountain West, Midwest, South Central, and Southern regions, combined for 67% of the film's opening. As such, they now are looking at a sequel to Young Washington. I recommend it. You should go see it, particularly if you're a history buff. It's fascinating, and it would be ripe for a sequel. I'd be very excited to see it. Aaron, I don't know if you're a lettuce eater, but be careful out there, particularly if you're a Taco Bell guy, I guess. I don't know. I keep hearing about this. I've been very busy, and I don't typically pay a lot of attention to this, but I keep hearing about people having, I'm going to try to keep it breakfast friendly, gastrointestinal problems, Aaron. Your wife's in medicine. Are you worried about this when you see these stories pop up that people's innards are exploding or whatever the hell they're saying it's doing out there to people? Does that panic you? Are you cautious?
No, I'm not worried. I don't frequent Taco Bells.
The Centers for Disease Control has confirmed more than 800 cases of what's, I guess the medical term is cyclosporiasis. I don't know. Has your nurse wife come home and shared with you this? Is this a problem?
No,
a gastrointestinal illness?
She works in trauma, not
okay.
Good.
This. I mean, not good, but because this sounds gross. The grand total appears set to continue climbing. 1,500 likely new cases. It's a parasite which enters the body through contaminated produce. If you're unlucky enough to ingest it, you may get stuck with weeks of problems. The exact source is not yet known, but in the past it's largely been found on fresh fruits and vegetables that were contaminated by irrigation water, tainted with yeah, I'll just leave it at that. But anyway, and my wife mocks me for it. She says I eat like a 2-year-old. I maybe that's true. I'm not eating a lot of fruits and vegetables. Got to be honest. So there. Ha. My 2-year-old diet keeping me safe from what apparently sounds like a pretty violent illness. Disneyland. Have you taken your family there? I have years ago, and it was a fortune then. Well, it's only getting worse. This from Breitbart. Disneyland has been ranked as America's least affordable theme park in a new review of Bang for Your Buck. The new theme park index by vacation rental website Home to Go looked at the average cost for theme park vacations and found the happiest place on earth was the most expensive trip a family could make to a theme park in the U.S. Now, you have a little guy. Aaron, will you take him? Do you imagine a family trip to Disney? Maybe you've already taken one. Will you do that?
Yeah, probably. My wife is still a Disney fan.
You'll still go.
Yeah.
All right.
Probably. We actually already have
$331
one
per
planned.
visitor in California. In Florida, Disney's Hollywood Studios, $257 per visitor. And that's per day, by the way, as I understand it. So a family of four would have to shell out $1,300 between $1,300 and $928 per day just to book a hotel room, park their car, get into the parks per day. $900 to $1,300 per day, Aaron. Your wife loves Disney that much?
Yeah, she's a big time fan.
Okay, $1,300 per day. They must be paying you well.
Paying her well.
Oh, man. One bit of good news to close out today, and that's U.S. inflation. It has cooled to 3.5% in a better than expected June report. This from Heartlander News as well. Inflation rose by 0.5% in May, declined 0.4% in June. It was the biggest 1 month shift in prices since April 2020. That's good news. Of course, it's largely tied to gas prices, which have fallen. And now we know things are starting to ramp up with Iran again. So we will continue to watch gas prices. Would love to see that inflation number continue to trend well. But we will watch it at heartlandernews.com, of course. And you can always stay up to date with all the latest news every single day at heartlandernews.com. Please keep up to date there. It's good, honest, straightforward journalism from my colleagues and friends at heartlandernews.com. And subscribe, by the way, here on YouTube. Give us a like. Comment if you're so inclined. We're sure glad to have you along here on this edition of Heartlander News Online. We'll see you next time right here.